Mystical Ninja starring Goemon is another game from the old memory vaults that I can remember having a great time with. It's basically what if Zelda Ocarina of Time, but wacky Japan. So let's take a brief look at the full game and all its weirdness and see if it holds up today. For now, let's just enjoy a bit of this ridiculous intro. We're introduced to two of our intrepid heroes, Goemon and Ebisumaru, as they're in a little bit of trouble at the local store. No, I don't know why Ebisu thought being in the nude and dancing would get him a discount, but this pretty much establishes the level of sense this game is about to make. Suddenly, a UFO flies overhead towards Edo Castle and we're given a glimpse of our two main villains. These two. Credit where credit's due, those are definitely some character designs. The UFO blasts Edo Castle and turns it into this. And we're into the game now. Mystical Ninja is largely like Zelda, but with a personality? I know that sounds a little bit strange, but to me, Zelda has always been a very curated experience. Mystical Ninja is definitely not. It's like they threw everything at a wall just to see what would stick. We can run, smack things with a pipe, jump, crawl around like a slug, and that's all for now. The random NPCs definitely have some choice dialogue. Like this girl who thinks that if she was hit by the UFO beam, then she might become a model EU citizen. I don't really know why a bunch of kabuki aliens are turning places into European buildings, but there's probably a lens you can look at this game through regarding westernization being bad, but that's as deeply as I'm going to read into it because, as you'll see, parts of this game are, frankly, bonkers. Now you can spend a lot of your time speaking to each NPC and figuring out where you need to go next, or you can spend 10 Ryo and talk to, well, this guy. I really don't know. But rest assured that Purazuma has been stuck in my head since 1997, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. He tells us that if we want to enter Edo Castle, we have to go to Mount Fuji first, so off we go. The soundtrack for this game is absolutely top-notch. Absolutely full of little jams that have been stuck in my head for 25 years. This game also just feels great to play. The characters are responsive, there's no real hitbox jank. For the most part, it just feels really well put together. And that's saying something for a game that was played with the monstrosity that was the Nintendo 64 controller. These silver cat dolls are our heart piece equivalent. Picking up 4 will give an extra heart of health. Not a point of strength as the game calls it. Anyway, we head up the big Fuge and climb our way up. For the most part, the platform is very solid. There's a couple of times where the camera feels bad, and I couldn't figure out if there's any direct camera control in the game, which will make a few of the later dungeons a little bit rough with some of the platforming. We reach the top, and Mokube gives us the chain pipe. The chain pipe is, again, it's like a hookshot analog from a Zelda game. If we hit a star block with it, we'll zip over there. Now that we have that, we should be able to enter Edo Castle. So let's go. Honestly, the music in this game goes unreasonably hard, and pretty much every track I hear just fires up those nostalgia neurons in my brain. It's absolutely wonderful. Dungeon design in Mystical Ninja is generally that you look for keys, look for locks, open lock, and move on. It's simple, but it works. You won't get stuck in the dungeons very much, which gives them a great sense of pacing. Edo Castle Transformed, for example, took me about 15 minutes including the boss fight. Being the first dungeon, it's obviously going to be the most straightforward, and for the most part you're just using the chain pipe to jump over gaps you can't quite make with a normal jump. Dungeons themselves have a few collectibles to find. Mr. Elephant here will give you the dungeon map, and Mr. Arrow will show you where the boss room is. There's also usually a few of the fortune cats to find. This dungeon also has these adorable little ninja boys who throw throwing stars at you. Adorable! When we get to the end, we meet Baron, one of the enemy's underlings. He says he wants to make Edo Castle a wonderful stage and, yep, that was a laugh track. He spins off screen and we follow to our first boss fight, the King Robot, Congo. Now if that's not the most obvious weak point you've seen in a while, I really don't know what could be. Congo's an easy enough boss fight. Smack it on the chin and dodge the flamethrowing lasers. A nice touch is that as the fight progresses, Congo gets progressively more damaged. Congo explodes, we get the Miracle Moon, and a door opens. We meet Lord and Princess Yuki. Princess Yuki says she heard somebody shouting instant stage beam just before the castle was hit, and Lord asks us to get the people who did this. Lord gives us the super pass, and we're on our way to chase down the bad guys. This also seems like an apt point to mention that you needed the N64's controller pack to save in Mystical Ninja, meaning I could never finish it as a kid because I just didn't have one. Of course, now that I know how relatively short the game is, I probably could have finished it, but it was pretty daunting as a lad to think I'd have to finish a Zelda-style game in one sitting. With Super Pass in hand, we're off to see the wise old man. But just to make sure, we go and speak to Plasma Man. Yep, wise old man is indeed our next goal. We show our shiny Super Pass to the guards, and they let us through. Along our way, we see the suspicious metal block that we can't do anything with. Curious. We also cross through this tunnel, which just doesn't have music, and is a little unnerving given how upbeat the rest of the game is. Finally spotting the wise old man's house in the distance, we start heading over there, but it explodes. That's not good. Also, what the hell was that on the top of it? And is that a conch shell? Baron shows up and says he's going to crush us with his robot. We get the opportunity to save. Goemon toots into the shell, and this happens. And yes, it's playing in full. You can't stop me. So welcome to the impact sections. We have this bit where we're running and destroying the countryside and buildings. Aren't we meant to be the heroes? Anyway, the better we do at these sections, the more Ryo and health we'll have for the upcoming fight. Jump the obstacles and smash everything. After causing some destruction, we're face to face with the wartime kabuki robot Kashiwagi. And my first attempt at this wasn't great, because I'd forgotten that you have way more moves than just punch. So after this went on for a little while, I noticed he still had a lot of health left. That's the number at the top of the screen, by the way. And I dug out the manual. Ah, we have a chain pipe, a super punch, and a laser. Well, let's restart and use that knowledge. On the R button, we have the chain pipe, which grabs an enemy, and we can spam the A button to reel them in. Then when they get close, we can press C up, C down, C up, A, and do this. And then we can C up, C left, C down, C right, Z, and hit them with a goddamn giant laser. Glorious. Kashiwagi eventually is defeated and explodes. We get a close-up of Impact's nightmare fuel face, and the game logo pops in. Impact drops us off, says he's starring in a movie in America, and jets off. Naturally. Further along the road, we reach Zazen Town, and upon entry we meet Yae, the secret ninja agent. She's also investigating the UFO, and informs us our enemies call themselves the Peach Mountain Shoguns. She decides to come with us, and I will talk about one of the things that's really nice about Mystical Ninja. At pretty much any time, provided you're standing still, you can press C down and switch to one of the other characters. There's not a real reason to do it yet, since only Goemon himself can use the chain pipe, but as you can guess, we'll acquire other things for the other characters that we need to use now and again. We try to cross this bridge, but Benkei tries to shake us down for treasure. We have none, so he calls us poor and tells us to bugger off. Ushiwaka here is apparently the only person to have beaten Benkei, so we ask for some advice. They'll give us the advice, but we need to give them fish first. So we get this little minigame here where we first have to grab 3 blue fish from the river below us, then 5 yellow fish, and finally 8 red fish. Once we've done that, we're given a log, called the Achilles heel. Apparently this log is Benkei's weakness. Benkei is not amused upon seeing us, and the fight begins. Benkei is going to jump up and down, and we have to time throwing the log at him to break his shins. The first 2 hits are easy since he won't block. The third hit, you have to make him land on the log, or he'll just hit it and it won't count. Our narrator tells us that this is the origins of the term Achilles heel. Fair enough. Benkei also gives us our friend, the mechanical ninja, Sasuke. But Sasuke has no batteries currently, so he's as good as dead. We'd better fix that at some point. Let's have another quick chill beats break here, because I really cannot understate how catchy these jams are. We go to the Awaji Island branch of the Uido Tourist Centre, who mention that their dragon has gone wild and we can't use the transport service. We offer to help and get teleported up to the dragon's back. I haven't left anything out there, by the way. That's just what happens. So we run along the dragon's back, killing a few enemies and trying not to fall off until we reach that weird looking machine at the front. Colon, one of the shoguns, says they use this machine to control the dragon to steal kids with dancing talent. Well, we'd better destroy it then. It's simple enough, just dodge as it's spinning, and when it comes to a halt, whack it. The dragon spirals through the air, Ye somehow lands perfectly, and this kid just meteors into the ground. This kid, by the way, is the dragon. His name is Koryuta, and in thanks to us saving him, he gives us a flute that will allow us to fast travel to places we've been. Very handy. Koryuta also mentions that the kids he kidnapped were taken to the hot springs, so we have our next destination. First off though, I want to have a look at these stairs. There are 4 flights to clear, and they each have obstacles that are easy enough to get through, except when 3 boulders in a line roll down. I just took the hit since I had no clue what to do. At the top we reach the shrine, and if Goemon throws 5 Ryo into the shrine, the god will give us Goemon's upgraded Ryo toss, the Medal of Flame. We can now light torches by throwing burning coins at them. Awesome. I'm sure we'll use this more than once. This is what the fast travel looks like, by the way. Very nice. Our next stop is Zazen Town, in order to acquire the first of our 4 magical abilities. We go to see Ushiwaka, who is slightly different from the last time we saw them. Apparently they've been eating sweets at the temple, and we need to be able to shrink in order to get into the hot springs. So we head there. It's Ebisumaru's time to shine, so we switch to him and talk to the priest. We then get this odd minigame where we're small, in a cupboard, and every now and then the door will open and this thing will peek inside. If we're seen 3 times, we're out. So we have to hide if he's opening the door, and we have to eat 8 sweets in the time limit. It's an easy minigame, but it's weird. With the power to shrink acquired, we run over to the hot springs, shrink down, and head in. Making sure to save outside, it's time for our second dungeon of the game, the Ghost Toy Castle. The Ghost Toy Castle starts, appropriately, with these ghost enemies. We can't hurt them yet, but eventually we'll pick up an item that lets us destroy them, so let's go looking for it. We have to use Goemon's Medal of Fire to light these 2 torches. Sub-weapons cost Ryo to use, by the way. Not a major concern since we have a lot of Ryo, and it drops fairly often, but it's worth keeping in mind. We come across this big crane game with a camera in it, and we need to turn the power on to play. So that's our current goal. There's a room with a seed and a big pot, which makes you think that the puzzle for this room involves the seed in the pot. But no. You get a bunch of Ryo and some healing items for planting the seed. Instead, you just have to kill all the enemies in the room to get the key to progress. I do really like that Ye and later Sasuke have different animations for killing enemies. It's a really nice touch. This room was kinda rough, mainly due to the camera angles and trying to walk across the tightrope. It's not an easy thing to do, believe me. But when we get across, we get this gold fortune doll. The gold fortune doll is a full heart increase, much like a heart container from Zelda. After a few more rooms, we find this switch, jump on it, and the power turns on. And what followed was the section of the game that I was stuck on for the longest. The perspective presented for playing the crane game isn't great, and you have to be super specific with where you drop the crane in order to pick up the camera. So here's a little montage of every time I failed. Eventually I managed to time things right and get the wind-up camera for Ebisumaru. This is what will let us take out the ghosts. You have to wind up the camera by equipping it, hold and B until it stops flashing, and then let go. A big flash emanates from the camera, and the ghosts are now corporeal and can be killed. Nice. I'll also hold my hands up and say I didn't realise this was a door for far too long, and instead tried to photo it to see if something would appear. I never said I was smart, I just said I enjoyed the game. The final puzzle of this dungeon is the pool table. You have to hit the balls in order, and avoid getting hit by the other balls. Nothing bad puzzle-wise happens if you get clonked by a ball, it just hurts. Thankfully, you don't have to line up a shot or anything, you just hit them in order from 1 to 8. Once we've successfully sunk them all, we can make our way to the boss of the dungeon, the surrender robot, Darumagno. A very simple boss, you just snap one photo of it and it'll cycle between having its heart on display and being opaque. While the heart is showing, you can give it a whack, and while it's opaque, you can't. Despite the simplicity, I'd say it's a pretty fun boss, since you're always either dodging or attacking, you don't really stand around doing nothing. Once destroyed, we get the miracle flower, and Colin appears saying they were only teaching the kids Spring Mountain dancing. Which doesn't really excuse kidnapping, but this game hasn't tried to make sense before, and it won't really try to make sense later. And then this mystery fella appears, the leader of the Peach Mountain Shoguns. His name? Spring Breeze Dancin'. No, I'm not making this up. He even gives our heroes, Goemon and Ebisu, his own choice of names. Fernandez and Antonio, respectively. He skedoodles away, and Colin also runs off, telling us we really shouldn't go to the Chugoku region. So let's go to the Chugoku region. One of the kids we rescued mentioned some batteries, and we could definitely use those, so let's go and get them. One of the batteries we need is in this desert named Inaba. They sure were proud of this desert texture. It's everywhere. It actually makes it a little bit difficult to navigate for idiots like me. Everything looks the same. Thankfully, I found out I could just jump up this specific dune and get a look from up high, finding the first battery pretty quickly. I'm not exactly where the clue is to tell you about this next battery. I just remember where it is from when I was younger. If you take a photo with Ebisu's camera in this room, the battery appears at the top of the tree. I guess Plasma Man probably gives a decent hint to this, but yeah, I have no clue how you're supposed to find this. Anyway, we reach the top of the tree and get our fourth and final friend, Sasuke. And damn if this guy isn't just the epitome of 90s cool, I don't know what is. Look at that hair. Sasuke's sub-weapon is bombs. There are a few places around the world where we can use them, but we're sticking pretty strictly to just the main game for this video. Now that we have Sasuke, we have everything we need to clear the Festival Temple Castle. So we run through Akiyoshidai, to the Shuhodo Tunnel, and on to the castle itself. The Festival Temple Castle is actually a pretty big dungeon with some fun rooms. It also has this pretty obnoxious room with stairs that move up and down as you stand on them, but as long as you consistently jump, it's not too bad. There's a lot of paths that feel like they're possibly optional, but for the most part you kinda need to explore this whole place in order to clear it. You'll be waiting for platforms now and again, and if you're anything like me, you'll probably get lost a couple of times. The reason we needed Sasuke was to get his sub-weapon upgrade. His kunai will now be able to freeze fox masks and also hot floors, which we saw earlier in the dungeon. I'm not entirely sure why they arranged these two platforms so they're on the same level, mind, because if you freeze the near one, you can't hit the back one while you're stood on it, but at that point, I decided to just eat the damage and go across anyway. I also froze this platform a bit too quickly and missed the jump, forcing me to go all the way back round to where I was, but I did find a golden fortune doll along the way, so I can't be too mad. The final platform and challenge for this dungeon involves these fish. We're aiming to get to the top of the room, and that involves jumping on the fish when they're close, jumping off when they're at the next platform, and repeating that a few times. Honestly, I think it goes on a touch too long, and if I'd missed a jump and fell all the way to the bottom, I'd have probably cried. It just takes an age to wait for the fish to cycle back round. Reaching the top, we meet our boss, the ghost robot, Tsurami. Probably the most obnoxious fight in the game due to the amount of waiting you have to do in between actually being able to hit it. It's going to throw these ghostly plates at you, and you can hit the red ones back. I've really struggled with the timing on when I could hit the plates, so this fight took me roughly 5 minutes, but if you miss your opportunity to attack, then you have to wait for it to go through its entire attack cycle again. And after a few hits, it changes how it attacks. The second phase is this rapid fire of green plates, followed by red plates so that you can hit back. And the third phase is these yellow exploding plates. And each attack cycle just feels like it gets longer and longer. But after getting through the 3 phases, Tsurumi explodes. You know, I've only just thought about this, but is Tsurumi a robot that became a ghost, or a ghost that became a robot? Was it built as a ghost robot? How would that even work? We snag the miracle star for our troubles, and Sharon appears mentioning a barrier blocking Kyushu will now vanish due to Surumi exploding. Our other main antagonist springs up now, introducing herself as Kitty Lily. She orders Sharon to get her the best foundation, then vanishes. We try heading over to Kyushu and meet Omitsu along the way. She's apparently making a dumpling delivery to Kyushu on foot. She's either insane or tough as nails, and I don't know which. As she finishes crossing the bridge though, Kyushu gets sucked up by a metallic blob which also vanishes. So I guess we can't really go to Kyushu anymore. Balls. Ye suggests we go see the fortune teller for advice, and I'm always down to speak to Plasma Man. He tells us there is someone moving in next to Goemon and we should go see him. So we do, and we get the worst minigame possible to unlock Goemon's super strength magic. Well, I say worst, it's actually not that bad when you figure it out. There are 6 holes with 6 balloons floating above them, and these absolute horrors with spikes on their heads will raise up out of the holes. We have to throw boxes to stop them from bursting the balloons for 99 seconds. What I didn't realise though, was that throwing 3 boxes at them would send them back into the hole. I thought you could only stun them, so my first few tries at this ended within 20 seconds. Once I figured out that 3 boxes is safe though, it was an easy enough minigame. The hardest part was just paying attention for a minute and a half, because if I'm being honest, there's really no danger if you know what you're doing in this minigame. Finishing this minigame gives us Goemon's super strength magic, which lets us move metal boxes. And we've definitely seen one of those, so let's go. We go up to the box, activate the magic and... Super Saiyan Goemon? Nice! While in this form, you take and deal more damage, but I honestly forgot about this, so you'll only see the magic when I need to move boxes. My apologies. We carry on our journey until we reach the Festival Village. Festival Village is this pretty chill place. There's a rumour of a waterfall that, if climbed, will grant you the ability to turn into a mermaid. Which sounds pretty rad if you ask me, so we should definitely check that out. Plasma Man also suggests we go to see Mokube at Mount Fuji for new weapons, and we're told of a witch that might be able to help us out, but she's up Mount Fear, and we can't access that due to an ice block. These new weapons should let us bash the blocks, so it's up Fuji we go first. Sure enough, we get everyone's second tier of weapons, so it's time to go see that witch and see what she can do. Heading all the way back to Mount Fear. Thank God we have a summonable dragon to chauffeur us around Japan. We smash the offending ice block and continue climbing the mountain. The witch tells us that she can tell what we're going to ask just by looking at our faces. Ebisu takes this opportunity to make a joke about his fly being open. And yeah, there's that laugh track again. Wild. What she actually sees is an old man. And we only know of one old man. And as far as we know, he got blown up back near the start of the game. She calls to the spirit of the old man and, sure enough, it's the wise old man. As an aside, I believe the wise old man created our little robo-buddy Sasuke. The wise old man tells us that if we want to save Kyushu, we need to go to space. And to get there, we need the 4 miracle items. Thankfully, we already have 3. So one more and we can blast off. Somehow. The witch charged us 300 Ryo for this little powwow, by the way. Shrewd. Next on the agenda is heading to the mermaid making waterfall, and we got a 3rd magic power minigame. This one's very straightforward. You either mash A or B and dodge the things that are falling down the waterfall. This is a very welcome change to the 2nd minigame. When we reach the top, sure enough, Ye acquires her mermaid magic powers. And if memory serves me right, a dog in the festival village mentioned a pleasant smell in the water near that village. So we'll go have a look there. While we're looking around the Sea of Japan, we find... a submarine? Yep, our next dungeon is indeed the inside of this submarine. Apparently this dungeon's full name is the Gourmet Submarine Castle, but I can't actually find where it's called that in the game. This dungeon feels very, very cramped. Or maybe it just feels that way because there's a lot of jumps near walls and you have to do some major finagling with the camera in order to actually see the jump properly. There's not a whole lot of puzzle in this dungeon either, but Ebisu does get to use his wind-up camera a few times to see hidden pathways. Also, Ye gets a goddamn bazooka, which I never really used, but still, it's a goddamn bazooka. Poron appears to be the least competent of the Flake Gang and actually lost the miracle item in Zazen Town, so coming here was largely pointless. This dungeon also doesn't have a boss, but what it does have is Everyone's favorite gorgeous robot, Impact. Yes, I'm going to let this play out again. Our battle this time is against the charming mermaid, Thaisamba 2. But this is definitely a reverse mermaid situation, and I'm not entirely sure how that can be classed as charming, but each to their own. This fight is a little bit more complex, as Thaisamba will move around a lot more, and at the halfway point our battle moves underwater, but honestly these impact sections are completely broken with the chain pipe super punch laser combo. And if you don't use that combo, they're kind of tediously long. Ah well, it's still a giant mech battle, and I'm a sucker for my giant mechs. After destroying Thaisamba, Impact returns to France to continue filming his movie, and we head to Zazen Town to try and track down the final miracle item. Benkei, our friendly guard, tells us that some fella named Kihachi, the collector, might know about the miracle item, and he lives in the center pond of Zazen Town. We go there and Kihachi is a kappa? Sure, just gonna go with it. Kihachi will give us the miracle item if we get him his favorite food, cucumber prepared by the son of the priest. So we go over to the temple to speak to the priest. Apparently, his son went to Mount Nyoigatake, which thankfully is just next door. But if we want to make it to the big fire, we need some kind of jump power-up. Honestly, this section of the game is kind of unnecessary pattern, but also it feels like they were just shoehorning in a power for Sasuke. The priest gives us a key for a locked warehouse in Bison and tells us we can train our jumps there. Just as a side note, I spent a fair bit of time lost in this game just because my brain couldn't map the area names to their respective locations. Maybe it's because they aren't, you know, an English name, but I just couldn't build up a map in my head. Anyway, it's off to Bison. Arriving at the warehouse, we immediately jump into our final minigame. Get it? Jump. I have a requisite number of puns per video and you're just going to have to deal with it. This minigame is simple but kind of frustrating due to some shaky hitboxes. The aim? Get to the top of the tower in the time limit. But I kept managing to get myself stuck on the tower itself and kept falling down. Yeah, this first attempt was a failure, but I didn't realise by how much. My successful run of this, with no falls, had 50 seconds remaining, so it took about 50 seconds to climb the tower. So really, if you fall to the bottom once, you might actually be screwed, so don't do that. We get a goddamn jetpack for Sasuke for finishing up the final minigame, and we should now be able to go to see the priest's son to get a cucumber to give to Kihachi the collector in return for a miracle item. And that might be the most ridiculous string of words I've said in a few days. To add insult to injury though, this cheeky bugger wants 800 Ryo for the cucumber. So I hope you've been conservative with your Ryo, and not actually bought anything. Because as you can see, I have just 42 Ryo left over, and I've not spent a single piece of it unless I've had to. We give the cucumber to Kihachi, he gives us the miracle snow, and we can now head off to space. How are we going to do that? We're going to this stone circle, which asks us if we really want to go as we might not be able to come back. Also, let's just giggle that Ye's head overlaps the text box here. Bang! Zoom! Up to space we go and into the gorgeous music castle. And the music here absolutely fits for a final dungeon. This dungeon is absolutely banging. It has it all. You'll use all of your different skills and powers in here. It's a decent size, so there's a lot to explore. Some of the platform is actually tough. We even get to use Mini Ebisu again. That's great. Even when dealing with some odd hitboxes like on these moving platforms, I just couldn't be bad because the music is pumping and it's just nice to have the final challenge use all 4 characters. Eventually we find the wise old man here, and I figured out I'm playing on a revised release of Mystical Ninja. Originally, the wise old man is sad about his pictures of girls being destroyed, but in the revised release, he's sad about his car pictures. Either way, this fuels his anger enough that he's going to make us our third tier of weapons, which are used for one purpose because these last two boss fights are just impact fights. Sorry. Anyway, we take our new weapons and whap this gate and carry on. The music amps up even further as we hit the last half of the dungeon. It goes harder, but I actually prefer the first half's music. This section is just tight platforming with some light switch booping. It's fine. Honestly, this is probably the best designed dungeon in the entire game. Just before our final bosses, we get treated to an opera. And again, I'm not kidding. Here it is. The Peach Mountain Shoguns retreat and activate a time bomb. I wonder how Goemon and the gang are going to get out of this. No, I'm not sorry I made you listen to that for a third time. Impact's theme slaps. And so we move on to our last two bosses of the game. In space. Just how we expected it to go from the start of the game, right? The first fight is against the great Peach Mountain battleship Balbera. This is actually a pretty lengthy fight that you can't just cheese with chain, punch, beam combos. Balbera is going to shift around quite a lot, and whatever is in front of us is what attack we have to deal with. The big red circle fires orbs. The 6 cannons on the front shoot spiked balls. The leaves on the side shoot orbs. Honestly, most of the things on this ship just shoot varying types of orb. And at the end of the cycle, the mass of the ship will open up and spit out little ships. This is your opportunity to actually do damage to it. You can destroy the other parts of Balbera in order to cycle through faster, and I definitely recommend doing that, or you're in for a long, long fight. After lasering the core a few times, Balbera goes down and we end up face to face with our true final boss. The Fairy of Love and Dreams, de Etoile. No, I don't know how to pronounce that properly. I find it hard enough speaking English sometimes. Never mind French. De Etoile is back to chain, punch, beam for the most part. But he's a bit more mobile, so you'll catch him a bit less often. He also has this attack where he throws asteroids at you, but if you can hit him with a laser before he finishes it, it'll be cancelled. Again, these impact sections aren't particularly hard, but it's just so much fun being in a giant robot in space that I really don't care that it's easy. It's just plain awesome. After defeating the robot, Impact blasts it one last time, and Spring Breeze Dancing and Kitty Lily get full-on team rocketed out of the galaxy, complete with ghost apparitions in the sky. With the day saved, Kyushu falls back down from space. Apparently the bombs that were set knocked out some kind of power that was keeping Kyushu afloat, despite the fact that Kyushu was kidnapped by a metallic blob. Goemon and Ebisu get excited when they see a crowd of women running towards them, thinking that they're heroes. But as they get closer, they realise the women are actually angry for the banishment of the beautiful spring breeze dancing. And bam! Cut to credits. I can say wholeheartedly that Mystical Ninja has held up exactly like I remember. It's incredibly weird, at times it's very obtuse, but I'll be damned if it's not just incredibly fun. Every now and then there's an experience that, in my opinion, is just so purely fun that I can overlook the flaws. And this is it. Mystical Ninja is absolutely one of those games. If you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, then feel free to check out some of my other brief looks, even if they're not so brief. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.